Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into some pretty revealing internal documents. They lay out Canada's plan for a huge shift in its immigration policy. We're talking about a move that would give the government some serious new powers to decide who gets in and who gets shut out.
All right, let's get right to the heart of it. The big headline here, coming from reporting that cites internal documents, is that the Canadian federal government wants the power to just mass cancel visa applications. And not just any applications, we're talking about targeting specific groups with a laser focus on applications coming from India.
And get this, the documents don't beat around the bush. They are super specific. They actually name India and Bangladesh as posing, and I'm quoting here, country-specific challenges. The main reason? They're pointing the finger at fraudulent visitor visa applications. So yeah, this isn't some broad, vague idea. It's a really targeted plan, a joint effort between Canada's immigration and border agencies, and interestingly, some unnamed partners down in the US. So the big question is, why now? What's the rush? Well, the documents spell out two main reasons behind this whole thing. And honestly, they paint a picture of an immigration system that's really feeling the pressure. Okay, reason number one, a massive, and I mean massive, surge in asylum claims. Specifically, we're seeing an explosion in the number of claims coming from Indian nationals, and it's putting a huge strain on the entire processing system.
And this chart, wow, it really shows you the scale of what we're talking about. Look at this. The number of claims went from under 500 a month back in May 2023 to around 2,000 by July 2024. That's a 4 times increase in just over a year. You can see why this is a huge piece of the government's internal argument for these new powers.
And the second big reason? It's the system itself buckling under the weight. This quote from an internal presentation says it all, really. The sheer number of applications from India and the extra work needed to verify them is apparently creating major bottlenecks. We're talking delays that slow things down for everybody in the system. Okay, so you can't just make a change this big overnight, right? The government can't just flip a switch. To pull this off, they need some new legal muscle. And that means one thing, new laws.
And that brings us to the legal framework for all this, which is a piece of legislation called Bill C-2. Basically, the whole point of this bill is to change Canada's main immigration law to give the government way more control over the entire process, from the moment you apply right up to having an active visa.
Now, here's what's so important about this bill. It would give the government this really powerful 3-step ability. First, they could just stop taking new applications from certain groups. Second, they could hit the brakes on processing applications that are already in the system. And third, and this is a big one, they could actually cancel or suspend visas that people already have. And they could do all of this if they decide it's in the public interest. But here's a really interesting twist. It seems the government is in a hurry. In what looks like a strategic move, they've taken the most powerful part of that bill, that ability to do mass visa cancellations, and broken it off into its own separate bill. That's Bill C-12. And the goal seems pretty clear. They want to fast-track it and get it passed into law as soon as possible. Okay, this is where the story gets even more complicated. You've got what's being said behind closed doors, and then you've got what's being said to the public. And, well, let's just say there's a pretty big difference between the two. I mean, look at this comparison. It's night and day. The internal documents, they're crystal clear. It's all about concerns over fraud and asylum claims from India and Bangladesh. But the public story from the immigration minister, that's a totally different tune. They're framing these new powers as something needed to handle big global crises, like a pandemic or a war. There's absolutely no mention of targeting specific countries. So, what's the bottom line here? What are the big takeaways from all this? Let's try and wrap our heads around what's happening and what it might mean for the future of Canadian immigration. Really, the key thing to understand is that Canada seems to be shifting towards a much more controlled and selective immigration system, one where they can react really quickly. They're looking for these incredibly powerful new tools that would let them essentially turn the tap on and off for migration from specific places. And they're building this case based on internal reasons that, as we've seen, don't quite match up with what they're saying publicly. And this all leads to a much bigger question, one that goes way beyond just Canada. As migration all over the world gets more and more complex, how do countries strike that balance? The balance between protecting their own national security and keeping their systems running versus their bigger immigration goals and their responsibilities on the world stage. That's a tough one. and it's a debate we're probably going to be hearing a lot more about. Thanks for joining us for this explainer.